Thanks very much for joining us. We're here to talk a little bit about why leadership matters. And I'm really, really honoured to be joined by alumni of the university. So I should say I'm Dr. Rowan Myron and I work in the College for Nursing, Midwifery and Healthcare. And we're joined by Paul Hendrick. Paul, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm a software engineer and support analyst and done all sorts. And I also do a lot for the university and the alumni board and things. And, you know, I have managed and led. So hopefully I'll have a bit of an insight to the discussion.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Paul. And Paul just told me he's also an author. He's written a book about holiday disasters, which I think is also quite an amazing contribution to the world. Maybe we'll ask him about that later. Helen, as solicitor, feel free to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Helen Pidgeon. I'm a local solicitor in Chiswick. I run my own business there. We do international divorce law. I run a team of 7 people, so I have some leadership experience there.
And also a mum homeschooling as well, are you?
Yeah, I've 2 young kids at the moment trying to juggle homeschooling and working. So my sympathies to everybody doing that.
I think that's definitely an experience out there for a lot of people now. Bernadine, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dr. Bernadine Idiwu, and I'm a senior lecturer in biomedical sciences at the New School of Biomedical Sciences at University of West London.
And I believe you also run a charity or founded a charity.
Yes, I'm the founder and director of Youth Against Crime, Not Crime Against You. So
I think that's just an amazing achievement, actually, to found a charity. Very, very impressive. And last but not least, Alex, do you want to say a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks very much, Rowan. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Alex Krunic. I have been working in the City of London for just over 2 decades. That's a long time. I still don't have all of my hairs. I do have some black hair still, which is a real miracle in itself. I run one of the post-trade businesses for the London Clearing House, which is part of the London Stock Exchange. So effectively what we do is we manage all of the risk for about 40% of all equities traded in Europe today.
Brilliant. Thanks very much, Alex. And also a sports fan, I believe.
Yeah, big sports fan. I love my boxing and my football.
Great. So thanks very much for joining us. And before we get into some serious discussions about leadership, I just wanted to kind of ask a kind of ice-breaking question, just to kind of so people can get a feel for who you are beyond your job titles. And I was just wondering if you could tell me, what was your very first record that you bought or streamed? Obviously, you know, one of those 45s, was it? Or some nice kind of tape that you got off the radio? What was your very first record, your first single? Paul, do you want to start?
Yeah, for me, it was a little 45. I can't remember which one it was, but it was one of those where it's a 7-inch bit of vinyl that didn't have a small hole in the middle, it had a big hole in the middle, and you actually had to have an insert that you clicked in place before you could actually play it. I've probably still got it downstairs because I do have quite a large collection of vinyl, and I still play vinyl at home, which is a lovely warm sound.
And was it a rock or pop or glam rock?
Would probably be erring towards the rock or possibly very early punk, that sort of era. I sort of grew up in the sort of late 60s, early 70s, and with a bit of a handful. So yeah, it was probably sort of erring towards heavy rock and light punk.
So for me, it was a pop record, Sheena Easton, before she went off and joined Prince. So that was kind of early 80s, I think, for me. It was very much more pop than rock, although I did love Queen when I was younger. How about you, Helen?
Yes, my first single I bought was Duran Duran, Planet Earth. So that probably rather dates me, but no, so I was about 8 or 9, I think, when that came out, and I really loved that. But then I did migrate on from the teeny boppers to become a real goth.
Yeah, oh, The Cure, that kind of thing.
So amazing, yeah.
Bernadine? Yeah, I'm a Whitney girl, Whitney Houston, and Saving All My Love.
Oh, love Whitney. Alex?
Right, I can think of 2 actually. I can't remember which one was first, but I definitely remember 2 records vividly that I bought as a kind of 10, 11-year-old. Eurythmics, Sweet Dreams, and then my absolute favorite was James Brown's Living in America, which was always also the theme tune for the Rocky movie.
Such a good record, that, isn't it? Yeah. Georgiana, you've managed to join us. Thanks very much. Welcome. Do you want to say a little bit introducing yourself? If you can turn your mute off.
There you go. There you go. Managed. Hi, everybody. I'm Gergana. I'm a clinical manager and risk assessor for Newham University Hospital and Barts, and I'm a midwife by background.
Thank you very much. And do you remember your first record that you ever bought?
Well, I will agree with Bernadine. I'm a Whitney fan as well, but I don't, to be perfectly honest, remember the first one. It was then a cassette.
Yeah. I remember back then. I know for a lot of people out there, it might be more, this is what I streamed, but for us oldies, it was definitely those 45s or a cassette. So I just want to get going now, asking you a little bit about leadership. Obviously, you're all in very different fields, and it's great to get that kind of real kind of cross industry kind of perspective on leadership. And one of the big questions for me, I teach leadership, and the thing that comes up again and again is heroic leaders. You know, people name, you know, Steve Jobs or maybe even Donald Trump, that one man with a vision out front. Do you think that heroic leaders exist? And if they do you think there's a dark side to it?
It sort of depends on your definition of a heroic leader, isn't it? You know, I mean, a heroic deed is not necessarily something that you really want to publicize, is it? I mean, most of the heroic leaders I know sort of have been in wars and things rather than sort of Steve Jobs. Yeah, he did a great job with Apple and things, and you know, all sorts of things. I wouldn't necessarily call them heroic, but certainly trailblazing, and certainly you know they've changed the world as we know it in a lot of ways. I mean, when I grew up, we didn't even have a sort of mobile telephone, let alone sort of mobile data pads that you can take anywhere around the world. You know, so something like that is his leadership to actually drive that forward has actually revolutionized the world. So if that is heroic, then yeah, that's.
I mean, in research, that's often what they say about heroic leaders, that one person out front with a vision that will change the world. I don't know about anyone else in your fields. Do you think there's a kind of heroic leader?
I wouldn't use exactly the word heroic. I would say courageous, because heroism is something which you not necessarily, I mean, there's a dark side behind it. And when you heart, you want to be inspired and not necessarily somebody who may feel much more demanding in terms of expectations rather than just encouragement.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, there's different types of kind of heroic leadership. I mean, I always think when you want to see leadership and whether they're kind of heroes or not, you know, you go at personal level and then you go at the external level, whether they're, you know, as Paul mentioned, whether they're political leaders or kind of business people. I certainly had a lot of leaders that inspired me throughout my career, and in particular, those that really kind of came to fruition during the 2008-2009 crisis. You know, certain people really stepped up, you know, took the bull by the horns and really came out making some very, very tough decisions in a very, very tough environment, and obviously making some very good rational decision in a very kind of hot environment. So I think they are. I mean, if I look, there are definitely 3 or 4 people within banking that I would definitely see as inspirational as leaders. Jamie Dimon being, you know, the CEO and chairman of JP Morgan, certainly kind of, you know, turned JP Morgan from a very good, solid bank to being the absolute world leader in financial services. You know, I think there are people like Steve Jobs, again, as Paul mentioned, you know, that have changed our everyday lives because we now have the world at our fingertips.
And do you think there's a potential for a heroic leader to rise in the next, you know, out of this pandemic as the new world as we face the new world and try to adjust to this new world post-pandemic? Do you think, can you see a new heroic leader rising in one of your fields?
I think, or not in my field, but I think probably more Bernadette's field. But I think, you know, scientists are coming much more to the fore now than perhaps they ever were, and given far more recognition. And I mean, the whole world is so grateful for everything that the scientists are currently doing to research and protect everybody. I think they will have far greater recognition of what they're doing rather than behind the scenes, and people don't notice so much. So that may be an area in a field that it does. I mean, my own field of law, there are people being quite heroic at the moment. There's quite a lot of backlash against lawyers at the moment. We're sort of being classed as sort of lefty, sort of, you know, people kind of trying to disrupt situations, and I think we're just holding people to account. And I think, you know, there are a lot of people at the forefront of that who are, you know, really standing up for truth and justice. So I think both in those fields, yes, potentially.
The long, quiet mouse nerd of a lab person sitting there finally standing to the front. And certainly
Indeed.
we've seen a lot of scientists standing to the front during this pandemic. So if I can ask you now, what do you think is the difference between leadership and management? Obviously, that's a kind of a well-trodden debate as to what is management, what is leadership, and do you think there's clear water between the two?
Maybe I'll
go ahead, Alex.
Sorry, yeah, Rowan, thanks, Paul. Maybe I'll start. I mean, to me, there is a clear distinction between management and leadership. To me, management is really looking at the kind of day-to-day oversight of business as usual kind of activity. To me, leadership is about vision. It's about connecting the firm's strategy and delivering against the strategy and objectives. And the other thing is, it's the time horizon between management and leadership. Leadership looks out a lot further than management. It looks out, where do we want to be in 3 years, in 5 years, in 10 years? The other thing in particular around leadership, you've got to look at, you know, most great leaders have fantastic ability to communicate, to ensure alignment across functions, so they get people's buy-in to deliver on strategy. They have a kind of strategic mindset. You know, they take a slightly different view to say an average person. They take an outside in view rather than an in out. You know, how does the world perceive us? And also leadership really challenges the status quo and the conventional practices. Leaders are not scared to embrace change, to challenge the status quo and come up with new paradigms.
Which again is kind of the Steve Jobs thing, challenging the paradigm and having a vision. Paul, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to say, from my mind, a good manager actually allows you the space and the tools to do your job properly, whereas a good leader will be out there challenging the forefront and challenging what's the status quo. You know, I mean, a good leader, if a good leader will actually say what their idea is, and if you sort of don't say, no, you're kidding, then they haven't actually thought hard enough, sort of thing, you know, because they are out there challenging the boundaries. They're trying something totally new that other people haven't thought of. And it's that bit about, because they're so visionary, because they're doing things that other people haven't thought of, the status quo is sort of slightly unbalanced, and people think they are slightly unbalanced in thinking those things. But a good leader will actually push forward and develop the ideas into fruition.
Do you think it's a leader's job to make those out there ideas feel doable, or, you know, not so out there? Yeah,
I mean, as I sort of mentioned before, you know, when I grew up, the idea of having a phone in your pocket was just unbelievable. It was something you saw on Star Trek or something. You know, it was just totally unbelievable. And here we are. You know, I made a call from Romania to the States on a mobile phone, who then connected me to someone else in Romania on another mobile phone. You know, and when I grew up, that was science fiction. And within a very short time, you know, that's through leaders, through visionaries, that has actually become reality. And there's so many different things that sort of links in with not just the physical item to make the call, but also the infrastructure to do that. You know, but with these visionaries, they have actually changed the world you could argue it's a better place, you could argue that it's not a better place. You know, some people argue that we are too connected and it's sometimes nice to be disconnected.
And we wouldn't have had this experience of the pandemic if we hadn't had Wi-Fi and data and able to work from home in a very different way.
Yeah.
Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I think.
Go on, Bernadine.
Yeah, thank you. I think leaders and management go hand in hand. So I think leaders have more of a motivational style, which is myself. But in terms of managers, I think they lay down the law. I think leaders do create change while managers actually react to changes. I think leaders ask more questions while managers give more direction. So that's my
yeah, that's a quite nice way to conceptualize it, isn't it? Yeah. And Gorgana, did you want to come on?
I just wanted to give an example because at the moment I'm not complaining at all, but it's quite a challenging experience to work in health sector. So we had heads together, obviously with distancing, a couple of days ago to discuss the Ockenden report, which is a report. The report came out just a couple of days, well, a month ago, with suggestions and assessment of the maternity services. And
have we lost Gorgana?
leaders, if you think about weakness, if you take the word weakness and you think about weaknesses in an organization, it was very obvious the leaders will take that as an opportunity. Yes, we have weaknesses, but the opportunity for improvement is there. We can take that and improve it. Whether the management body will see it as a challenge, and those are two completely different approaches to the same problem, actually, the same weak part of the organization of the problem or whatever.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. I'm going to ask you now to think a little bit about the people you're working with. So turning to kind of like, you know, the younger staff that you work with, how do you feel, or how do you spot a potential candidate that you think has great promise for developing into a leader, or to kind of succession planning to, you know, be those ones to take over the firm after you've left, kind of thing? Any particular techniques, Helen?
This is something that I'm currently sort of addressing in my own firm at the moment, and something we're thinking about. And yes, I mean, I've sort of got a very good young candidate who's been working with me for a few years, and I can see great things for her in the future. And I think one of the things identified quite early on was her ability to remain calm in a crisis, to be able to think carefully, think about what she was doing, but keep that calmness, but be inspiring as well. So, you know, she's inspiring other members of my staff and other staff more junior to her. And I think probably those were the key qualities, and it helped me. So, you know, I think those are some of the key things that I look for in terms of, you know, potential successor and potential leader. So somebody who could potentially take over and move it to the next level, they need to have confidence. They need to be able to show their ability, and I think leadership itself is quite a natural thing. It just comes to people, I think, sometimes, and some people are more comfortable with it and others grow into it. But I think some people just have that, and the leaders in lots of different fields, by the time you get their CV, you see they've been leader of, you know, sort of youth group, leader of or a music group or something, or, you know, they've been taking management roles at school. You know, they were form captain, they were this captain, you know, throughout their whole lives. You just see them naturally just stepping up to things.
That's an interesting point you've raised, actually. Is leadership born, or can it be learned? Anyone else? What do you think,
Yeah,
Alex?
I mean, maybe I'll say a few things. I mean, to me, leadership, and in particular in kind of financial services, at least, you know, I have kind of a lot of experience working with various people. Leadership, I mean, all leaders tend to have one attribute, and that really is they want to deliver some kind of change, or they want to make a difference. That's the first thing. The other kind of core skills for leadership, you know, you need to be accountable, you need to be reliable, all these things. But then there are different types of leadership, and in my view, there isn't a single person that's a global leader in any field that hasn't had a level of coaching, a level of mentoring. To me, leadership skills are molded. We all have our own styles. We pick up a little bit. I steal a little bit from the people that I find inspiring. You know, the good bosses. What do they do well? How can I do that? You know, all of us know, you know, what's good and what's bad in terms of the way people are towards us. So if you pick up on those good things, they're the traits you want to pass on to others. So I definitely think that there is an element of, yes, you are born with certain skill sets, like you say, confidence, you want to take the initiative. And leadership is not about being the boss, because everybody thinks leadership is about being the boss. Leadership is not about being the boss. It's taking the initiative. You know, it's coming up with an idea. It's coming up with a different perspective. It's about having skill sets. There are kind of three types of leadership that I would kind of recognize. One of them is kind of personal leadership. What do I do on myself? I become a personal leader because I deepen my understanding, I build my knowledge base, and that knowledge base helps me to make decisions, better informed decisions. The more knowledge I acquire, the easier for me it is. The other kind of personal leadership trait is managing ambiguity. You know, in a crisis situation, how do you manage a crisis situation, stay calm, make the right decisions? Then you've got a really, really important trait, in particular in big organization. You need to have people leadership skills. It's not about you being the Steve Jobs. It's about you getting the best out of other people. It's about you listening to people, adapting different styles. People have different styles. With some people, you've got to go hard. With other people, you've got to go softly to get the best out of them. But it's about developing others, coaching them, and then obviously empowering them, because leadership is all about divesting that responsibility. It's distributing it amongst your team. And the way you do that is by getting the people ready and prepared for you to do that. And then the final one is kind of group leadership. And really, that's really looking at the kind of vision and trying to get your team or the people around you to buy into the vision. Therefore, you can deliver a kind of common goal or a common objective.
I would definitely agree with Alex. The research backs you up. You have to sometimes respond in different way to different people to get the best out of them. I think that's a really good point. Anyone want to add to that?
Yeah, as my role as a lecturer, I'm looking at those students are asking questions, asking more questions, challenging me in certain areas of me teaching them. I'm looking at the way how students are supporting one another. I have a lot of helpers with my students that actually want to support their peers. I'm looking at the students that have come forward and say, I want to be a course rep, because we put it out there. And if you've come forward, you're already showing me signs that I can see you're going to do really well, you've got potential. For my charity, it's similar, supporting one another. When I put a call out for someone to lead in a project, I'm seeing those who've accepted the call to lead in projects. And those people know that they get maximum support for whatever they want to do. I'm looking at the way they support one another. So there's several things we're looking at, different levels, different people.
So do you think that relates to the concept that's become quite popular around leaning in? So you're leaning in and you're volunteering. And,
Absolutely, yes. Very, very much important.
Yeah. And what top tips, do you have any particular top tips that you would give to young people who are kind of wanting to be a leader or to show their leadership potential? What things can they do that would impress you?
Well, first of all, I will always encourage my young people to get a mentor. That is very, very important. I am where I am because of my mentor. Enthusiasm, always show enthusiasm in everything you've been given to do. I like to see them asking for responsibilities. And as you said, leaning forward, putting yourself forward and reaching out and reaching to the top, asking questions from senior people. I mean, that's something I did again. You know, I know I wanted to be somewhere, but most people wouldn't go to, for example, the principal of King's College London and say, hey, I'm here. I'm a graduate of King's anyway, and I want to see a change, or I want to see more BME scientists. And then he listening to me, inviting me to meet with him. And then, as they say, this is the beginning of my career. So using initiatives, doing things out the norm.
Do you think it's also that things you have passion about? Because obviously you I could tell the
Yes.
passion when you're speaking there.
Absolutely, yes. That's number one. Number one, passion is very important.
Anyone
Yeah,
else? Go
yeah, I
on.
mean, I would definitely agree with Bernadine. I think, you know, any kind of young person starting out, in terms of top tips, definitely kind of learn as much as you can, listen, watch the kind of space around you. The mentoring thing is so, so important. And you know what, I mean, you guys in the kind of education sector, you can see that. I have sat in lectures many times over when I'm thinking, am I the only person in this room not understanding what's being discussed? Stick your hand up, ask the question, because you're not going to be the only person that does it. You know, if you think you're the only person that doesn't understand it in the room, but have the courage to ask the question. Sorry, I don't understand. Can you just explain that? What do you mean by that? The other kind of key tip is ask for advice, ask for different perspectives. Each of us has a slightly different perspective, and those different perspectives can, you know, I always love the kind of the open questions. You know, how would you do that? What do you think I should be doing here? How differently could we, you know, is there a different approach to this? I think all of those kind of traits are definitely kind of good for young people. But the one thing, you know, that every young person should do is just kind of align themselves to those things that they like in other people. You know, if somebody is a good orator, if they're good at speaking, if they are a fantastic lecturer. I mean, we all have our favorites, the good and the bad. We love one boss, we hate another boss. Why do you hate one and love the other? You know, and these are all people's traits. So try and align yourself with the good traits in people, in decision making. How do people make decisions? And just kind of ask for advice. I think all of us have enough constituents wherever we work, whichever area, whether that's education, the medical field, legal field. It's not about knowing the answer yourself. Is if you don't know the answer yourself, where can I go and get the answer from?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. And just before we go into the interactive bits that we're going to do, I just wanted to ask you, obviously we're in a very pressured time at the moment. You know, things are changing very fast on us. We're in lockdown, we're out of lockdown, we're in lockdown, we're out of lockdown. What do you do as a leader to help the people around you that you're working with to cope with some of those pressures, or what do you do to cope yourself?
So yeah, I mean, some of the things. All of us kind of changed our working lives kind of almost overnight. You know, where we're in an office with hundreds of people, you know, that you can interact with. All of a sudden, we're remote. I think the most important thing in this kind of high pressured environment is to really reach out, to have a routine. I have a routine in my team. I speak to each and every one of my team members at least once a week, however big the team is. You share information, you communicate, you take the time out of your day to think, to read, but also reaching out and asking people, what are their concerns? How do they feel? What are their fears? What you know, what's working for them remotely? What's not working for them? Because all of us are kind of facing, you know, you've got to kind of take out your professional working life and think there's a human element to all of this that's going on there. People have had personal sacrifices, they've had losses, they've had friends and family affected by it. You know, unless you know that, you know, I'm not asking them what's on their mind or, you know, how they're coping. You know, some people are going to cope better than others. You know, I always think to myself, you know, I'm lucky enough, you know, to have a garden, you know, in a full lockdown. When the weather's nice, you know, you can sit in the garden. I do half of my Zoom calls from the garden. If you're sitting in a 1-bedroom flat and it's 30 degrees outside, you know, you're going to have a slightly different mindset. So I think all of these things are really kind of important. And I think in any kind of pressured environment, I think taking time with your day. So our CEO came out with an idea about 3 months ago. It was like a corporate policy. He said, I want everybody to block out Wednesday afternoon in their diaries. No meetings, no formal meetings whatsoever. Have Wednesday afternoon, do whatever you need to do your work, read your emails, but I don't want any formal meetings. And you're thinking, wow, this is great, right? And everybody's kind of can't wait for Wednesday afternoon, because then I know I'm not going to have 10 Zoom calls one after the other.
It makes an impact, doesn't it? All of that screen time. Gorgana, I'm just really interested from your perspective in the healthcare sector, the pressure that people are under.
Yes, I was just about to say, Alex, when you don't have a structure, and you can't have a structure, it's very important to listen, just to make a space and listen. take a cup of tea to the team, or just say, I'll release you for 15, 20 minutes. Then people feel that although, yes, you haven't stopped for 12 hours, for 13 hours, you know that the patients can't, they will never stop coming. And the feel that somebody is thinking of you, somebody is there to help you. We booked, say, pretty similar, but the other way around. So we booked every Wednesday for 2 hours, no managerial work or anything, and we go on the shop floor. We can't help everybody. We can't, I mean, release everybody, but at least you are there for them and you encourage them to talk.
Anyone else want to add into that high pressure environment?
I probably have a slightly different perspective. I've worked from home for quite a few years and worked with geographically dispersed teams over that time, and they'll be in different time zones and different areas. And the one thing that gets me through it is taking a bit of time just to speak to each person, you know, not necessarily about work, but just saying, hi, how's it going? And that little, even if it's only 5 minutes, you know, so you make sure you talk to your team, a bit like Alex was saying, you know, make sure he speaks to everyone in his team. But, you know, that little bit of contact really helps, because it can be quite soul destroying if you're sitting at home all the time on your own. And as Alex said, you know, great, we've got gardens and things and we can sit in the garden and do things in the garden. But you do need that contact. And, you know, things like Zoom, they've made it better. I won't say it's bearable, but it's been made more bearable than it would have been had we not had something like this. And during the lockdown, we've had sort of Zoom parties, we've had Zoom drinks with friends and colleagues and things, you know, just to keep that contact going and just to get the chat. And one thing we do at work, we have a thing called a borrel, which is an informal chat. And the one rule, you know, we've got about an hour on a Friday afternoon. The one rule is you are not allowed to talk about work, and you just chat to the team and you just listen, see what's going on, see what DVDs people are watching, what music people are listening to. And it really helps because it maintains that connection between people.
So important, isn't it? I think because when we're in physically with our team, we're chatting in the corridors, we're making tea, we've got all of those kind of informal ways that we just chat and keep up to date with what's going on in people's lives. And to some extent, moving on Zoom means you have to kind of make more effort to do that. You can't just bump into someone in the corridor saying, oh, how is it going, Bernadine? How are things? Instead, it's more of a let's create a space on Zoom where we can actually talk and have a glass of wine and chat.
Yeah, for me, I'm constantly checking on my students' well-being. They know me, that they can have access to me anytime they want. It's quite interesting because you just think when you say that to students, they're going to be on you 24/7. Absolutely not. They're very mindful. Students are very, very mindful, especially my anyway. And so I'm always encouraging them, asking them if there's anything else I can do differently for them, any support they need. In terms of me personally, my faith helped me loads. It helped me loads, and my family. And with my faith, I'm really fortunate that with the Catholic Church, we can have online services. And we've got a really interesting Father Antonio. And it's a thing whereby he challenges us to think about what we're actually thinking of. And I think his words from the very beginning of lockdown really, really helped me. You know, really, really helped me think differently and accept certain things. Without him, I'm not sure where I'd be now, to be honest with you. So
it's all about that connection, isn't it? Having that connection with someone who matters and can talk about deeper things. Because again, on Zoom, we don't always get into those deeper discussions, do we? Because it's a bit more remote. So I'm just going to move now to the interactive exercise. I wanted to make this kind of something that you all out there could interact with. We do have what I'm just going to share a screen. I'm going to ask you to think about what you are as a leader. So basically, I'm going to put up a screen with a whole set of boxes on, and you get to choose one out of every box. So whatever word you think in that box suits you best. So I'm just going to share my screen. And I'm going to ask you to take a look at these boxes and choose which of these words. So box 1, we've got competitive, joyful, considerate, harmonious. So just take a few minutes to choose which of these in these boxes suit you best, and then we'll move on to the next screen. You can just keep a note of which ones you're choosing. So whether it's a 1 or a 2 or a 3 or a 4. Okay, I'm just going to move on to the next slide now. I hope you've all had a chance to look at that one. So there's another set of boxes. If you can just note down the numbers of the words that you choose onto a sheet or into your phone. Okay, I hope you've all had a chance to look at that. I know the panelists did receive this in advance, so I hope you've had a chance to think a little bit about what represents you as a person and as a leader. So I'm just going to move on now to the scoring screen. So if you can count the number of 1s you marked, the number of 2s you marked, the number of 3s you marked, and just kind of do a quick tally of how many 1s, how many 2s, how many 3s. Okay, if you've had a chance to have a quick add up of how many 1s you came across or you felt represented you, I'm just going to move on now to kind of just tell you a little bit about what this means for your leadership style, and then we're going to have a bit of a discussion about this. So if you've got lots of 1s, if you added up and the most number that you chose was 1s, then you're a driver as a leader. And a driver is a business-like person, very fast and decisive. They like to seek control and dislike inefficiency. If you got 2s, if you got the most of the numbers was 2s, then you're an expressive style. And these expressive people are quite flamboyant, they're quite creative, very fast and spontaneous. They like to seek recognition, but dislike routine and boredom. If you got lots of 3s, then you're an amiable style. And an amiable is very conforming. They are very much a team person. They like to kind of make sure that everyone's doing okay. They're less rushed, much more easygoing. They like appreciation and they dislike insensitivity. If you've got lots of 4s, then your style is an analytical style. And analytical styles are very formal, very measured, systematic. They like accuracy and precision and dislike unpredictability and surprises. So just to give you an idea of what this means, this is very much about whether you prefer feelings or facts, and whether you like to kind of tell and be directive, or whether you're quite happy to kind of ask and create an environment for the team. So these images will be shared with you later if you're interested. But what I'd like to do now is just have a bit of a discussion with the panel about these styles, and, you know, are they a driver, are they an analytical or an expressive or an amiable, and what does that mean? Because often these styles can be used very helpfully in when you're trying to work with someone, or if you're struggling to work with someone. Sometimes it's good to get a feel for, what do they like? Do they like fast paced? Do they like quick results? Or do I need to kind of take a little bit of time and get to know them first? So I'm just going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm just going to ask the panel if you're willing to share. I'm a driver, just to let you know. Anybody else come out as a driver? Number one.
I am kind of, Rowan, I'm somewhere in between 1 and 2.
Right.
Definitely, but you know, when it comes to kind of certain traits, you know, I'm definitely a facts person.
Yeah.
You know, quick, decisive. I guess it's also based kind of, it depends on, I guess, on what you do on a day-to-day basis, whether you work in a fast-paced environment, whether you know, there are environments where you don't really have a lot of time, you have to make decisions, they're, you know, kind of very fast-paced, and some people just can't take that. I mean, you know, I see this with people starting out their careers in banking or finance, and they, you know, every person that ever wanted to join the City of London, if you ask them, what do you want to do? He says, I want to be a trader. Well, what does that mean? You know, I want to sit there and I want to make lots of money. Okay, fine. You know, you sit on a trading floor for 5 minutes, you'll burn, you know, and if you can't take the heat, you'll be out of there. You'll say, you know what? I don't want to be a trader anymore. You know, I want to be an analyst. I want to be a research analyst. I want to sit there, you know, coming up with these models. And it's a lot of kind of reality, and I guess aspirations that could be very different. You know, some people, you know, they think they want to do something, yet their style doesn't really, is not suited for that.
Mm.
And that's why I think it's great for people to try different things, because that's where they find their comfort zone. And as Bernadine said earlier, you know, if you can do something, make a living out of it, and you actually enjoy it, believe me, that's a real massive plus. Real massive plus, because not everybody, not everybody has a career where they could wake up every morning and say, you know what, I love what I do. Yes, there are moments and times where I love what I do. There are moments I think I don't want to go to work, you know, because you're dealing with all the pressures and everything that's kind of hanging over your head, which never goes away, by the way, with certain jobs. And I'm sure in the medical profession, it's the same right now. You know, you're doing long shifts for hours on end. And you're thinking, oh God, how am I going to get to work tomorrow morning? Because I've got to do it again and again and again and keep motivated, etc.
Yeah. Anyone else want to comment? What did you come out as drivers, amiables, expressives?
I was an expressive first with a driver close second. So yeah, I think that probably kind of does match my style. And yes, I'm quite fast paced as well, and kind of blue sky thinking, want to push things forward. So yeah, I think which again comes back to the difference between leader and manager. I think I think manager is probably more considerate, more sort of taking time to think about things, implement things. Leadership's perhaps, as we were talking earlier, something a bit different. So yeah, I think that's probably about accurate.
Yeah. Did any of you notice kind of in those styles people that you work with? So you're thinking, oh, I know, you know, I'm pretty sure Rachel's this. Did that come across to any of you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, Ryan. I mean, there are probably 3 or 4 words that we haven't mentioned so far in this kind of leadership debate. I mean, to be a great leader, you need to have certain traits. One of them is that you gotta be a trustworthy person. Definitely, you gotta be open, and you gotta be inclusive. You know, that again, you're talking about diversity, but you also have to have humility, because you know, if you're trying to kind of, you know, beat people to death, you know, you're never going to get the best out of them, right? At some point they're going to crack, and it's all about trust and openness. And I have to say, I've definitely adapted my leadership style as I've got older, as I've learned from others. You know, I look at our CEO, the group CEO is a gentleman called David Schwimmer. You know, impeccable. You know, there isn't, you know, his style is just so open, trustworthy, relaxed, inclusive, yet his mind is 200 miles an hour. there isn't a thing, you can talk to him about, I don't know, biochemistry, and he'll know enough about it, thinking, how do you know that? Why do you know that? And I think that's important. But I think in any kind of leadership role, you've got to build relationships, because the only factor that matters in all of this, whatever career we're in, is people. If you can't get on with people, you don't. I mean, that's the only angle. Whether you're buying a car, whether it's a Mercedes or BMW, if you're going to buy a BMW and you hate the salesperson from the moment you walk in, you're probably not going to buy it because of that individual. And if you walk into a Mercedes garage, maybe Mercedes is not the right car for you, but you love the guy trying to sell it to you, and you make a connection. So the people aspect is definitely really important. And that's why I think, certainly over my kind of 20-year career, I have seen a lot more diversity in the latter years, and it's so much better. I mean, City was definitely a kind of white male dominated kind of arena for many decades, for centuries probably. Now we got a lot more diversity. There's more women, there's more people from ethnic backgrounds, there's younger people, there's older people, and when you have that kind of mix, that's really when you get the best out of it. That's when you mix all the different styles and all the different backgrounds, and that cultural diversity as well is just so important, because it's so different from country to country.
You get that enrichment from all of their experiences and all of their cultures all coming together, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
I just want to open it up to questions from the guys watching us. If you want to use the Q&A function to send a question in, feel free, and then we can ask the panel. Just while we're waiting for those to come in, anything anybody wants to say about what we've been discussing?
I was going to say I'm more of an amiable person. That's just my style. I'm just very inclusive. I just want to make sure everyone's okay. I want people to say, yeah, you've done well. So that just to ensure that I am doing the right thing. So I don't need anyone's praise, but at the same time, just to ensure that I am on the right path. I want to hear what everyone's got to say. I want everyone to feel supported. And that's just me. Direct well.
So we've just got a question coming in saying, if I want to improve my leadership, how do I do that?
Listen.
I mean,
Listen.
It depends really what aspects of their leadership they want to improve. Certainly we're all, as individuals, we've got our strong points and weak points, and I always think if you want to improve in any sphere, you've got to build on your deficiencies and your weak spots rather than kind of enhancing the things you're already good at. So if you're proactive, you're a good orator, you're not shy, you can speak out, that's fine. But then you maybe need to take a step back and be a little bit more inclusive, listen a lot more, be more attentive. Make sure you have a knowledge of your reactions. Our reactions definitely have an impact on people. They say, if your boss doesn't say good morning to you in the morning, or he does, or he or she does, or they don't, it definitely has a bearing on your day. And it's really, really important to kind of listen, get yourself a mentor, somebody either in the same industry, ask for advice, listen, read, observe. I think these are all the things, and leadership and progression and learning never really stops. I mean, for us, we have director trainings 2 or 3 times a year, and a lot of that is around leadership, and in particular now. So the London Stock Exchange is going through a big merger now. We're buying a company called Refinitiv, which is the old Thomson Reuters business. Now that's so stressful for a lot of people, in particular those people where they're going to be dual roles that will probably end up being one role. So people are, in all of this adversity, they're thinking, am I going to have a job tomorrow? What am I going to do if I don't? So it's really kind of managing people in those kind of stressful times and trying to kind of take them through that change, through the journey. It's really, really important.
Another question that's come in, do you have to be a leader? Because again, we haven't really talked about followership. Are followers just as important as leaders?
Absolutely. I think followers are very, very important, and you can't have leaders without followers. So, and I think if you have a good solid team behind you, good followers who aren't trying to be leaders but are content to get on and follow and find satisfaction and fulfillment in what they're doing, that's a huge benefit to any leader, because you can delegate, and a lot of leadership is about delegation. It's not doing it all yourself. It's how you then delegate down to people, and you find people's individual strengths, and you think, okay, well, you're not a leader, but you're following, this is what you're really good at doing, so let me give you that to do. And they really thrive under that. So I think absolutely it's very, very valuable.
Yeah, and we talked quite a bit about mentorship, and there's a question come in about, how do I find a mentor, or, what qualities do I look for really in a mentor? How do we approach a person to ask for mentorship, and is it advisable to have more than one?
Right, yeah. Go, if there's somebody that you look up to, you see as a role model, can see that person, you can see that person can help you, you go up to them and just say, I like what you do. Do you mind mentoring me? And 9 out of 10 times, you'll be surprised that they will say, absolutely yes. Okay.
Most people are flattered, aren't they?
Precisely. And secondly, in your employment or your university institution or whatever it is, they may have some mentoring schemes there. So find out what's there. And absolutely, you must have more than one. I have 5. And if I have so many, it's because each of my mentors do different things for me. Some are there for personal development. Some are there to guide me with my charity. Some are there to help me with my career progression. There's so many. So absolutely, yes.
Also,
Don't be
underestimate what
afraid.
the mentor actually gets out of the equation as well, because a mentor will actually learn a lot from the mentee. It's not just a one-way street, both sides are listening, both sides are learning. It is really important.
I think what's important around the kind of mentee-mentor relationship, as I think it was Paul that mentioned it, I certainly learn a lot from my mentees. And I think what's really important is that you don't formalize the relationship too much. It's not homework. It's about open and sharing ideas. And a lot of people kind of get scared of that. Oh my God, I've got to go and talk to that big head of this department. What's he, he's going to give me even more work. It's not about that. It's about sharing ideas. And it's all about, and I would definitely say, when I was working for JP Morgan, we had a formal mentee-mentor. Everybody had to have at least one. And obviously, if you're a mentor, you can't have 15 mentees. Otherwise, you wouldn't be doing your day-to-day job, but you can have 2 or 3. And it's so beneficial. And I've certainly benefited, as Benedict said. I've certainly had a couple of fantastic mentors. And it's just, I would also encourage you, if you're having or looking for a mentor, try not to have, for example, for me, I personally don't like to have mentors that are part of the same division as me. I like to have a different perspective. So, if I'm in business development role, I want to speak to somebody who's in a legal division, or he's in a slightly different, who's going to give you a different perspective on things. And these are all kind of important. It's nice to have a variety of kind of views and ideas.
Yeah, Gugana, did you have something to say earlier?
I just wanted to say that very often it's daunting. So don't be afraid, but also listen to your heart, because very often you approach somebody, you want that person to be your mentor, but sometimes the connection is not there. And if it is not there, go and approach somebody else.
Yeah, you have choices, don't you? We've got another question saying, do you have to be a leader if you're a senior manager?
I don't think you do. I mean, to me, leadership is not about rank. As I said before, it's not about rank. And I don't actually, in terms of kind of leaders and followers, there's no such thing as leaders and followers. We all contribute in a different way to whatever we do, to a common cause. I think leadership skills, one of the core leadership skills is when you think kind of what's good, what can I do to make the whole ecosystem better? It's not about me getting a promotion or me getting a pay rise, or I have one ask, and I've always had this ask from my bosses, and I would encourage all the young people, is how are you going to make me better? How are you going to take me to that next level? You show me. And I like when people come in and knock on my office door and say, excuse me, can I ask you a question? I want to know this, or can you help me with that? That's initiative. That in itself is leadership, even though you may not realize it, but that's initiative. And most people love to kind of share their knowledge, in particular, as we get to a certain, stage in our careers. I used to think when people my age, and, when I started working at, I don't know, in my early 20s, and somebody was like my age, 48, 49, I used to say, oh my God, that guy's old. my God, I don't want to, but people love to share ideas, share their experiences, because you can't have youth and experience. That's why it's called experience, because it takes a long time to get it. So the more you can kind of tap into that experience sooner in your career, you're going to cut a lot of corners.
Another question come in. Do you feel there's an interrelationship between being a good leader, being well respected, demonstrating your knowledge base, and being liked as an individual away from your professional role? It's quite a long one, that one.
So maybe I can tackle that. And I'll tell you, I have this huge debate with my son. So my son is 14. He is a massive, massive basketball fan. He knows every single NBA player. So we are having this debate, who's the greatest basketball player? So I don't know whether our students will relate to these basketball players, because they're all very famous sportsmen and they made a ton of money and they're on TV all the time. So my son has got this debate between LeBron James, who's a current player now, playing for the LA Lakers, and a player that I admired probably 20 years ago called Michael Jordan. Now, the difference between those two, one major difference is Michael Jordan has never, ever, ever in his career, or during his career, after his career, has ever said, I was the greatest basketball player of all time. Yet everybody else has said he was the greatest player. LeBron James comes out and he says, I'm the greatest. When it comes to being a great leader, you need other people to judge you. It's not about you judging yourself. And good deeds get judged by good people. So it's not about kind of self-attribution, giving yourself the 5 stars. Let your people give you the 5 stars.
Yeah, I think that's a good point, isn't it? It's about demonstrating, here I am just trying my best with my passion to be the best I can be. And then other people are saying, you're doing great, instead of that very American thing, which is like, I'm the best person in the room. It's like,
but
where's
you can't
the substance?
I think you can't be a good leader unless you take a personal interest in the people that you work with. It's got to be something above work, some kind of connection, whether it's your charity, whether it's your sport, whether it's your church, whether it's, there has to be something. You've got to take an interest, because the moment you ask people, the strange thing is, we had this director offsite a little while ago, and same thing. It was like we were asked to talk about something personal. And it was like, when you start talking about personal things, people drop their guard. They are completely different in their working environment, because you think, oh my God, that guy is like so horrible, or he's so, and then they start talking about their children, or they start melting away and thinking, oh, actually, he's not that bad. It's actually, I've never seen this side of that person. And that's why I think you've got to take a personal interest in the people you work with. Otherwise, you can't build relationships. There's no links.
So another question's come in around followership, which I find quite interesting. What should be the criteria measuring a follower, or a follower uses to measure and determine who a leader is? How do they choose who to follow?
They need to follow people that they share values with. Whether people are demonstrating good leadership skills in a way. How do they engage with the people that they work with? They're really nice. They really come. They're delivering a really hard message in a really respectful way. They're not shouting. They're not screaming. They're asking people to meet a deadline without kind of banging their hand on the table and saying, you will do that by, they're saying, look, this, it's all about style. And I think you need to kind of follow different people. And I don't like this word followers, right? We're all followers to a degree, depending on where we are in our careers. And the other thing is, a lot of people don't become leaders because they don't like the responsibility. They don't like the burden that carries with them. They don't like the fame. You look at a lot of people that become famous for whatever, music, whatever different industries, and they can't cope with the fame, because with that fame you get so many added pressures, and they're just like, it's not worth it. I've sat there in interviewing people for a job, and I'm saying, look, I want you to add this team to I want you to manage this team as well. And they're like, no, not for me. I'm not going to earn, a couple of grand more, and I'm going to have 25 more people that I need to manage. No way. I don't want that headache.
I'm interested from the different, industries. Paul, in software engineering, do you feel it's different than in banking? Because obviously that can be quite an extroverted profession.
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a few extroverts in software development as well. You know, it is about passion is the word. You know, you've got to be passionate for whatever you do. And, you know, I've got a lot of respect for the coder who's passionate about something they've actually achieved or something they have actually developed, you know, and they've gone away and they've maybe overcome a few difficult problems along the way. But, you know, you can tell straight away that they really wanted to do a piece of work. You can tell that they're really passionate about having achieved something and having actually learnt something along the way. And I've got a lot of time for that sort of person, you know, because the passion actually comes off them when they're talking about what they've achieved, when they're talking about what they've done. And, you know, if they've got a problem, a lot of time, passionate people will come to you with a problem. And they won't just come with a problem, they'll come with 2 or 3 different solutions and ask which is the best, or which one would you choose, or can you give another? And it's that whole thing about, you know, being passionate about what you do. And the feelings, you know, yeah, you can do a million lines of code and it can be fairly dull, or you can do a million lines of code and be really passionate about it and really enjoy it.
And create something great.
Yeah.
I think in followership, to go back to that question, often it is about identifying, you know, someone with a crazy idea that you like the sound of, you know, so you as a follower are thinking, well, actually, that person's got a great idea and I want to make that happen too. Yeah. So therefore you kind of align yourself with that person with an idea. And I think Alex's point is definitely true. There are people who don't want the burden of leadership. And there are others who want to lean in and create something great. So it sometimes comes down to, yeah, what makes you happy and what kind of gets you up in the morning with your passion to say, I want to make a difference in the world. And for some of us, that might be standing out front. And for some of them, that might actually be writing all those millions lines of code and making something great happen. It doesn't necessarily always have to be the shiny front glossy stuff.
Sometimes people just want to be part of something great rather than leading in the front, you know, and even if they sort of produce a small part of whatever, you know, maybe a small banking code or a bit of software or whatever, but it's part of an overall package of whatever, but that is something that's revolutionary and that is actually something that, you know, just the feeling of being part of that evolution, being part of that revolution. A lot of people really enjoy that, and that will actually spur them on to other things.
Yeah, and I think that's true of science right now, isn't it? You know, scientists who may have been in the background in the lab for a long while are now coming to the fore because all of us in this pandemic are relying on them and their vaccines. But it was passion and creating something, even if it was just a small piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So I'm aware we're coming towards the end. Is there anything you want to say? Any of the panelists? Helen, you've not spoken as much. Is there anything you want to kind of get in there before we finish on leadership?
I think people have touched on just that idea of passion. I mean, it is such an amazing privilege to get up every day and go to a job and do a job that you enjoy. Often, if you're a leader, you have to work very long hours. You have to compromise on so many other things in your life that if you don't have that passion, it would be impossible to do it. But you've got that, and you've got the ability to determine the direction of your life and whatever you want to do. So I think in terms of having people looking to go into leadership, think about what that means, think what you can do with it, and just look around yourself and look around the people you admire and you look up to and learn from them.
Thank you. Yeah, Jagana, is there anything you want to say before we end?
Don't be afraid. Look for what you want. Make sure you know where you're going, and don't be afraid.
That's definitely a good thought. Definitely. Alex, anything you want to say?
Take responsibilities of your own career. You know, definitely challenge the status quo. You know, enlist the help of others to help you get to where you want to. You're not alone, and I always think it's great to have mentors through your life. You know, in every aspect of your life, and you know, make sure you're not shy to ask that question. If you're sitting there in a lecture, you don't know something, ask the question.
Yeah, that's definitely a good thought. Bernadine?
Yeah, I was just going to end by saying definitely get yourself a mentor. You know, I've been mentoring for so many years and it's just so rewarding. As Paul said previously, mentoring is a two-way relationship. It's a mutual beneficial relationship where both of you get something out of it. So yes, please do get yourself a mentor.
Yeah. Paul, do you want to say any last words?
Yeah, I mean, my main philosophy is don't be afraid of making a mistake. Be afraid of not learning from mistakes. You know, go out and try things. You might make a mistake, you might get it right. If you make a mistake, you learn from what you do and you move on and actually progress.
Yeah, I definitely would echo that. That would be my final words, is definitely you only learn from mistakes to some extent. You know, we as humans can be fearful of making mistakes, but especially in healthcare, we get very risk averse. But actually, it's the mistakes that you really learn from. It's when things go wrong that you actually start to really up your game and things get better. So I would say, yeah, go out there, make some mistakes and don't be afraid of them. But also, yeah, put yourself forward, lean in, take those opportunities, because to some extent they won't necessarily land right in front of you on a silver platter. It is about going out there and getting there. Thank you everyone for joining. Thanks so much to the panelists, Helen, Georgana, Alex, Bernadine and Paul. Really interesting discussions. And I understand you'll also be able to see a YouTube video of this at the end. And I hope you enjoyed the exercise and the discussion. Thanks everyone. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.